The baseball portion of this channel isn't dead, it's just been on life support. Hi, I'm Weston, I love talking about the Astros, and I'm not actually just going to be talking about the Astros today. No, mon frere. I am talking about baseball at large, because the past, 48 hours have been an acid trip when it comes to free agency. Everyone's signed. Not everyone. There's still some people still available. Correa! Anyway, I want to talk about some of the big deals that I thought were interesting and that mattered to me and a lot of you guys that were interested. I got some tweets and such talking about it, and I was like, you know what? I should do something about it. So, where to begin? Let's start where all good things do. Queens is what you would say if you wanted to start at the worst place. Anyway, the Mets were busy. They made a couple of big signings. The two that I'm going to talk about is the first one of Max Scherzer for a 3-year, $130 million contract. 42 a year for Max Scherzer. Bananas contract for him. Don't get me wrong, Max Scherzer is a great pitcher and, deserved to get a lot of money. But, oh boy, I didn't think he was going to get that much money. Last year, Scherzer had a 2.46 ERA, an expected ERA of 2.90, and a FIP of 2.97. Very, very good numbers. Received quite a few Cy Young votes. Accrued 5.4 FWAR, and had 236 strikeouts to only 36 walks. He was fantastic. Right, Max Scherzer was great last year. And, theoretically, he's going to be good again this season. He's a little bit older, so I was kind of shocked to see them splash so much money on a guy that was older, but I suppose it makes sense because it's such a short-term contract, only 3 years. But $42 million on a record-breaking deal, and with the money that he's still getting paid due to the deferred payment by the Nationals, he's going to be making over $50 million a year for the next 3 years, which is more than I will ever accrue in my entire life, most likely. But before the Mets made a big splash to make the top two of their rotation the most horrifying and filthy top two of a rotation in all of baseball, now it's not even up for debate, they went out and got themselves a center fielder, Starling Marte, which some Astros fans were sad about, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine. He got a 4-year, $78 million contract. Last season, he had a 134 WRC+, had 5.5 FWAR, and slashed 310, 383, 458, and was 82nd in outs above average. He had a very nice season last year, split between the Marlins and Oakland. I think that's a good deal. That's around where I would say is a very fair number for him. If anything, I thought that was a little bit of an underpayment. $20 million a year for him is very good. That's a very good deal if you're them, and kind of makes me go, oh, then why didn't the Astros do that? Oh, I'm sure they'll come back in the next few days and do something. James. And now let's head to Canada, where the Blue Jays signed a few guys and had a very weird offseason where I think, in a way, they might have gotten better because their first thing was they locked up Jose Berrios to a massive contract. 7 years, $131 million. Last season, split between Minnesota and the Blue Jays, he had a 3.52 ERA, a 4.12 expected ERA, and a 3.47 FIP with 4.1 FWAR, 204 strikeouts to only 45 walks. A very good season for Jose Berrios. I know he made an all-star team before that. I'm going to say that was his first very good season. This is a guy who I really think is going to go nowhere but up in the next few years, so I think they're probably getting him. Is it a lot now with what he's had in the past? Yes, where I think he's going, and that's sort of what they're looking at. I think this is going to end up being a pretty good deal for the Blue Jays. Now, granted, they didn't lose him or anything, but having him and Kevin Guzman come in, but losing Robbie Ray, I really don't think they lost that much with their overall rotation. I think, if anything, it got a little bit better, because I'm not exactly the most high person on Robbie Ray. I'll get to that in a bit. But the other Blue Jay signing was Kevin Guzman, 5 years, $110 million, which I was slack-jawed that they got him that cheap. Last season, 2.81 ERA, a 3.55 expected ERA, a little bit higher than you'd like, but the FIP brought it way back down with a 3 flat, 4.8 FWAR, and 227 strikeouts to only 50 walks. 5 years, 110, that is a steal. 22 a year, that's fantastic value for the Blue Jays. Again, their rotation is going to be very, very good next year. If they would have retained Robbie Ray, it would have just been unfair. But even as still, Robbie Ray for Kevin Guzman is not a bad trade-off. No one would complain about that unless you're probably a Blue Jays fan and bitter that you lost Robbie Ray, who's the reigning Cy Young winner, but we'll talk about him in a bit. Speaking of players the Blue Jays lost, Trevor Semien heads to the Rangers to be the second best second baseman in the AL West. I said what I said, and I will defend him to my death. Anyway, last season he had a 131 WRC+, had 6.6 WAR according to Fangraphs, and slashed 265, 334, 538 with 45 home runs, and was very good defensively, 89th percentile in OPS above average, which is the same as Jose Altuve. He's still better. Never forget it. 7 years, $175 million, though. That's a little much for me to pay to someone who's 31. I don't know. Maybe it turns out well for them. Maybe it doesn't. But that's a whole lot of cash for a guy who's on the wrong side of 30. Speaking of the Rangers, they got Jon Gray, 4 years, $56 million. Wow, you got him cheap. 4.59 ERA last year, 3.98 expected, and a 4.22 FIP. Last year, he also had 2.3 WAR according to Fangraphs, 157 strikeouts to 58 walks. That's a cheap deal for a name like Jon Gray. At that price, you really would have liked to have seen the Astros show some interest in it. I get that we don't need starters, but man, the Astros just have done nothing. And we're going to talk about relievers in a second. We've done nothing, man. Keeping with the notion of rivals, Robbie Ray to the Mariners, 5 years, $115 million. That's a good little chunk of change for the reigning Cy Young winner. I am not that high on Robbie Ray. He's been up and down for a while now. He had a very good season last year. I still don't think he was the Cy Young. I would have given that to Garrett Cole, our boy. Is he still our boy? I still like Garrett Cole. Some people don't. I thought he would have got it. He had a good ERA, but all the expected numbers kind of flew out the window for Robbie Ray. Last year, a 2.84 ERA, which is incredibly impressive, right? Great ERA. But a 3.60 expected and a 3.69 FIP. That's where I'm kind of, I don't know. I would have given it to Cole. I thought he was better, and then the strikeouts also come into matter. Last season, according to Fangraphs, he had 3.9 wins above replacement, 248 strikeouts to 52 walks. Not a bad contract. Let me phrase that. A pretty darn good contract for the Mariners. If you can get anywhere close to his Cy Young season, you're going to have a very good pitcher who could eat up the Astros for the next 5 years. Why didn't we do anything in free agency this year? I almost forgot about this one for the Rangers, but to bring it up, Corey Seager to the Rangers. 10 years, $325 million. Holy money bags, Batman. That is a big chunk of change to go be their franchise shortstop for the next decade. Wouldn't it be interesting if we had our franchise shortstop that got paid? James! Last year, Corey Seager had a 147 WRC+, slashed 306, 394, 521, 16 home runs, 3.7 F-WAR. A very nice season. Corey Seager's been one of the best shortstops in the past few seasons. And if you're Carlos Correa now, you could simply walk into James Click's office and demand basically any amount of money, because you could say, hey, so Corey Seager's getting like $32.5 million a year and can't play defense but is good offensively. Francisco Lindor is getting $35 million a year, can't hit for anything, but is incredible defensively. I can do both. I'll take $500 million, please and thank you. And if you're James Click, you go, yeah, I'm not doing that, but I mean, Correa is going to get a bananas amount of money. I genuinely, with this contract with Seager and the one last year with Lindor, Correa could get $37, $38 million a year. I know it's big, and you might say I'm an idiot for saying it. I could see Correa getting a $400 million contract. Not a 10-year one, but I think maybe a 12 or 13-year contract, and I think he might get $400 million. Correa's going to get a bag and a half. Or maybe I'm an idiot, and that take goes cold very, very quickly. Speaking of players that the Astros lost, Brooks Raley, beloved ex-merchant, to Tampa Bay for 2 years, $10 million. Really? You couldn't offer him more than that? Really, guys? Like, $5 million a year. You couldn't give him that? Like, you need bullpen stuff. The ex-merchant would have been the way to go. 4.78 ERA last year. But 3.87 expected ERA with a 3.27 FIP and a expected FIP of 2.90. But you couldn't pay him 5.5 a year? You couldn't pay him 6? Come on, guy. 65 strikeouts last year to 16 walks. This one hurt. Speaking of Tampa Bay, by the way, Wander Franco, 11 years, $220 million extension. Whoo! Boy, he got money, and did he get it. going to get $20 million a year on average over the next decade plus one. Not bad for Wander Franco, and if you're the Rays, that's kind of smart to try to get him locked up early so you can actually have a franchise player for a while. This was shocking, though. He does not have a no-trade clause, so the Rays could trade him at any point in that. I doubt they will, though. Last season, half a season, but still finished third in Rookie of the Year voting. 127 WRC+, 288, 347, 463 with 2.5 wins above replacement. Very nice first season for Wander Franco. He broke out the way they were hoping he would, and they splashed the money on him to reward him for it. Good for him. I love Wander Franco, and I've been looking forward to seeing him debut for a little bit now, and seeing him be the player we all thought he would be was pretty darn exciting last year. The Rays got a good one locked up for a while now. Also, on the topic of players the Astros lost, Kendall Graveman to the Chicago White Sox. 3 years, $24 million. Last season, stats are a little discombobulated because it was split between the Astros and the Mariners. He was much, much, much better with the Mariners, but don't fool you. He was also still a very good reliever with the Astros. A 1.77 ERA, an expected ERA of 3.71, and a FIP of 3.19. Now, to be fair, the difference of him with the Mariners versus the Astros was stark. The ERA goes from .82 with the Mariners to 3.13 with the Astros, and the FIP goes from 2.90 to 3.60 Mariners to the Astros, but that's still a 1.39 ERA plus with the Astros. He was still a very, very good pitcher that the Astros traded a haul for, including what could have been your solution this season to the shortstop problem in Abraham Toro, and then let him walk a couple months later, which really irritates me, especially when you consider this. The one move you do make is for Hector Neris, which, fine pitcher. 2 years, $17 million. You couldn't have found another year at that same price to throw in for Graveman or added an extra $500,000. You couldn't have paid him $9 million a year for 3 years. Couldn't have done that? No. You didn't do that for the guy you just traded a haul for, James Click. Why? Hector Neris. And what sucks is, like, Hector Neris is a fine pitcher, right? Great swing and miss stuff. 98 strikeouts this past season. As a reliever, that's great. 30 walks. Bit of a walk problem, but still pretty good. 3.63 ERA, a 2.99 expected ERA. Great. Lit up StatCast. FIP's a bit of a problem at 4.08, but you know what? Still, good pickup. Solid pickup. Lit up StatCast, like I already said. But when you let Graveman go, it just leaves a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth when you basically get a clone of him in Hector Neris, or at least a clone in the contract. Graveman was better overall. And that just bugs me a little bit. Again, Hector Neris is a fine pitcher, and I'm actually pretty happy about the pickup, but knowing that you lost Kendall Graveman for the same thing bothers me. And today we watched the Astros just completely sit on our hands and do nothing as all of these other free agents flew off the board. And that kind of stings because the Mariners got a lot better today. The Rangers, granted, they were terrible last year, and they've had facelifts in seasons previous, even recently, that ended up not affecting them at all. But the Rangers made moves today to put them in a position to maybe not compete for the crown of the AL West, but certainly put them in the mix for a playoff spot as a wild card, or who knows, maybe they will compete for the West, and we didn't get better. I would debatably say got worse overall. You have free agents, you gotta go get someone. I know it's right now looking like gonna be a big pill to swallow, but Seager flew off the board today. And it sounds like the Rockies are doing everything they can to retain Trevor Story. I'm actually gonna check and see if they signed him. So they haven't yet, so Trevor Story is still on the table, but man, the Astros, we needed to wake up today and we just didn't. And now we're going into negotiations with the League and Players Association, which the only things I've read have basically said, oh yeah, there's going to be a lockout, which is daunting to look ahead to. If anything interesting happens with that, I might talk about it. But man, today was it was a day in free agency, to say the least. It's been a couple of days in free agency that have been insane. And sadly, our Houston Astros have sat there and basically done nothing. But luckily, after this lockout is sorted with, there will still be time to go get some free agents. Hopefully. Maybe they'll even surprise all of us and get some fantastic rate on someone like, oh, I don't know, Carlos Correa. Anyway, that's all I have. Sorry that I've been basically inactive the past few days. Not past few days. I've been inactive basically forever with the Astros since the World Series run. I'm going to say it again because it still is. I get completely demotivated whenever it's not the regular season for baseball. I don't know why. Soon enough, an Astros award video will come out. I'm probably going to save that for Christmas, maybe New Year's-ish. I think that's the start of the new year, I think, is when I'm going to do that because I kind of missed it with the MLB awards. So probably around then, I'll do a big award thing for the Astros. Until then, unless we do something big, that's the Astros content for right now. Rangers video Wednesday. I'll be there then. So that's all I have today. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day. And as always, go Stros.